Welcome to another episode of Networking Unleashed, Building Profitable Connections. I'm your host, Michael Forman, and today we're talking about the kind of networking that doesn't just grow your business, it grows you as a leader. My guest is someone who knows what it means to lead through challenge, to mentor through uncertainty, and to build relationships that stand the test of time, both personally and professionally. His experience in leadership and mentorship gives him a front row seat to how meaningful connections can be the difference between burning out and breaking through. Whether you're building a business, leading a team, or navigating life's curveballs, today's conversation will challenge you to see your network not just as contacts, but as catalysts. So I'd like to introduce Jeff Grippando. He's part of a larger company. I will let Jeff introduce himself and gives a little taste of his background. Welcome to the show, Jeff.
Thank you, Michael. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me. Been looking forward to this conversation for quite some time. To talk about my background a little bit, so it's interesting. I have to say I have a very decorated past, and I owe that to my father. When I was in middle school, my father I grew up in Chicago, Illinois. My father got transferred to Jackson, Mississippi. I was down there for a few years. He gets promoted again. We moved to Atlanta, Georgia. So I'm now in my second high school at this time. The summer between my junior and senior year of high school, my dad comes home and says, I just got promoted again. They want me to run the manufacturing facility out in San Leandro, California, which is in the Bay Area. And we moved to California. So I went to three high schools in my life. And the reason I bring that up is I was forced at a really young age on how to make friends quickly. And you had to put yourself out there. And I lost all fear of being shy, timid, what have you, because if I didn't put myself out there, I wouldn't have friends. And so I joined every single club, played sports, got jobs when I turned 16, and I just started meeting people and so forth. So I ended up going to college out in California, and I started my career with a printing company. And I was a salesperson out in the San Francisco Bay Area. This is 1990 and 91. And I was trained by a very good company on how to sell print and how to build relationships. It was drilled into our heads very quickly. We sell consumable products, we sell print, we sell stuff that people have to use over and over again to run their businesses. And so the message was they buy from people they like. And so the first thing you need to do is figure out how to build a relationship. And I think I had a lot of history doing that all through my middle school and high school and college years, obviously. And I just became pretty good at it. And I knew that I wanted to learn more about the company and work in a marketing role. And I was then transferred to Chicago, where our corporate office was built. I then wanted to get into a sales management role, and I was moved out to Denver, Colorado, where I managed our sales office and a variety of offices in the Rocky Mountain region. And I continued to grow in my career around print, around branded merchandise, promotional products, all about marketing, all about brand. Brand was pretty much in my DNA. I eventually made my way back to Atlanta, Georgia, and was fortunate enough to get promoted in running a branded merchandise division of a $1 billion company out of Dayton, Ohio. And that's, I would say, really accelerated my career across a lot of different leadership areas, mentorship areas, and so forth. But I would say, if you ever asked me when I get to retirement someday and someone said, what was the best part of your career? I would say I got to travel the country and actually work with and meet folks from some of the largest brands in the United States. To be able to do business with Harley Davidson, Boeing, to do business with Jelly Belly. I've been in the Jelly Belly plant in Vacaville, California, Coors Brewing Company, Progressive Insurance, Geico, just some massive brands and some wonderful people that I had the fortunate opportunity to work with. And that's probably been the best part of my career. Now, 5 years ago, in the middle of COVID, I took this new position with a company called GBS Corporation. I'm the president of our printing and promotional product division. Our division is called GBS Brand Connect. And I was fortunate enough to get this position because of an acquisition that GBS made of a boutique agency called Atomic Wash out of Norcross, Georgia, an agency and folks that I did business with for at least 20 years prior to both of us becoming a part of GBS. And it's been the past 5 years have been wonderful. Been a lot of challenges, as you all know, since 2020, but we continue to grow and to help customers advance their greatest asset, which we think is their brand.
Absolutely. And I'm in agreement with you 100% since half of my life is branding and everything else also. I agree 100%. So let's delve into the question, shall we?
Sure.
Um,
Perfect.
in your leadership journey, how has networking played a role, not just opportunity, but in resilience?
Oh, that's a great question. I think it's in terms of resilience, and I would almost go back to being a starting as a sales rep. It's you're faced with rejection every single day. We're still obviously faced with rejection, and it teaches you and it forces you to think, how can I get into my walk in my customer's shoes, get into their, we used to call it, get into their odds are, understanding their business, and then being able to mentor a sales force to think and understand the same way. No only means no for now. That's kind of the philosophy. And I think a lot of that comes through resilience and not getting frustrated and so forth. But I always like to tell my reps, and I have the same philosophy, when you're having a bad day, pick up the phone and call one of your best customers, one of your best relationships you have, and just talk about the business and their lives and their families and so forth, or go out and have dinner with them or take them to a ball game or something. That always makes the day better and helps you get through those tough times when you need to be resilient and patient and always moving forward. On top of that, to answer your question, I think the ability to set goals and objectives is very important too. And before you sit down or venture out into something new or start something different, build a goal, build the objectives, build the action steps, and then hold yourself accountable, hold your team accountable to what you wrote. All goals should be written down. You write them down, type them up. They need to be posted somewhere, and then always go back and evaluate and review where you stand against those goals, whether it's a weekly, monthly, or quarterly basis. I think that's very important in anybody's leadership style.
Absolutely. I used to have a whiteboard behind my desk, and I used to put my goals up there. And I very quickly realized that a whiteboard is erasable. So one day when my brother, who was in the company at the same time, changed a few of the words and I was in trouble. But putting your goals on written down on a wall, on
Yep.
something, very good advice. And that's something I think that everybody should do.
Well, it's funny if you came into my office and you probably can't see it very well,
Oh
but
yeah, I
right behind
can.
me is two whiteboards, and there's every single goal and objective for my business unit for 2025. And I actually, which this is interesting, and I'm a big believer as a leader, manager, what have you, your teams need to be a part of that goal setting process. Probably in November-ish of this year, I will gather up my director of operations, my customer service manager, my director of sales. I'll take a few key people off their staffs. We'll all go into our boardroom down the hall over here and we'll start building our goals and objectives for 2026. I won't erase that until January 1st because we like to always go back and do a quick review. How did you finish the year? Document it. That'll all get erased. And then everything that we worked on in November and December will go up on that board. By January 5th, that board will be full of all of our 26 goals. So yeah, I'm a big believer in looking at it every day. I look at that every morning. Yep.
Absolutely, absolutely. As did I, as did
Right.
I. And in a mortgage business, I had 15 people under me, and they always saw the whiteboard when they came into my office. They always
Yeah.
saw my goals and they saw that I was serious. I wrote down my goals and
Right.
I was serious. And that was one thing that I hope that they picked up on.
Yeah, and you, and as a manager of an operation, yeah, that those goals and objectives, they should cascade down to everybody. So everybody's tied into, obviously, my salespeople have specific goals, my customer service people have specific goals, but those goals should all bundle up, roll up to what's on that whiteboard back there for the entire operation. And I think over the years we've done a very good job of making this a team effort, not just me standing here as a dictator saying we're going to do this. It's a team effort. We win and lose as a team, not as individuals. That's always been my philosophy. Yep.
That's key in leadership. That's
Hmm.
key in leadership. You want to be a team, but your team, you have to create other leaders. You have to give them the responsibility, and so that they feel like they are part of it. And so by them feeling part of it, they're more accountable, and then you can hold them accountable. So it's a whole big process, but very good. That's Can you share a moment when a mentor or a key connection helped you overcome a major obstacle?
Yes. And I think the example that I'd like to give was we were challenged. It was a promotional product customer. This was in my previous job. We were challenged by this organization to set up a separate operation in Mexico City. So this organization had their headquarters was in Chicago. They also had another headquarters in Mexico City because that's where a lot of the products were manufactured south of the border. And they wanted a website, everything in Spanish, obviously. They wanted a supply chain where they wouldn't have to pay duties and taxes. So, as you may or may not know, a lot of our branded merchandise items are manufactured in Asia, in China. They come to the United States, and that's where they're decorated and so forth. And then if they were then shipped to Mexico, you're paying duties and taxes. And nowadays tariffs is the big word of the day. But they didn't want to have to pay that. So we had to build a supply chain that went right from China into Mexico. So it never touched the United States and so forth. It was a big challenge. And my mentor at the time was my chief executive officer. And he first was very negative on the fact of sending a team down to Mexico City. They were worried about our safety, obviously. I had never been to Mexico City before and so forth, but the requests kept coming from the customer that this is something you all need to do. If you ever want to get into the European marketplace with us, you're going to have to start here. After I convinced my CEO, who was a great mentor to me, he was actually my vice president of sales when I was a regional sales manager in Atlanta. So I worked for him for years, and he was promoted to CEO. His leadership and mentorship around the conversations we had of everything that we had to get accomplished and being able to sit down, document, meet regularly to go through that process. He assisted in working with key decorators here in the United States. We found out who had operations in Mexico City, and we built a complete strategy of how we were going to get this accomplished. Funny little story. At the time, we only had one gentleman in our whole company, and this is a $1 billion company. One gentleman that spoke Spanish, that was bilingual. And he's actually still with this company. He's one of their sales reps in Miami, Florida. He's from Cuba. So when I first flew from Atlanta down to Mexico City, he flew over from Miami that Sunday morning, and our folks from Chicago flew down, and we all met up at the airport in Mexico City. And it was just classic having him there because none of us spoke Spanish, and it was an interesting experience. I'll admit it was a little scary the first time because you hear about corporate folks getting kidnapped and this and that, and they warned us and told us how to dress and what to do. But that mentor was very. He's retired now, but we still talk and stay in touch, and he's been a mentor to myself and a lot of other people over the years. So that's probably the biggest challenge where I needed him to assist me in my career.
Everybody needs a mentor. As big as you are, you always have a mentor. I feel because I have a mentor also, but I mentor other people. Okay, so I feel like I'm in the middle. Everybody asks because the people who I coach and who I mentor, they look at me and they say, "Who do you have?" Because if we're asking for you for what problems, who are you
Yep.
going to? I'm to a higher authority. That's all I say.
Yeah,
But
exactly. Nice.
that's all I know.
Yeah.
Okay. What's the difference between managing people and leading through relationships?
Oh, that's another good question. You know what? I think at a very high level, when you say managing people, that kind of strikes me as an 8 to 5 job. That's someone coming in, punching a clock, making sure that whatever needs to get done that day is getting done and so forth. I was always, my other mentor in my life, and he has passed away a couple years ago, was my father. And I mentioned my father earlier in this conversation, and I used to go to work a lot with my father when I turned 16, when I was in college. I worked at that manufacturing facility out in California. And then my father led by example when he told me a long time ago that a good leader is a servant to their teams. And coincidentally, years later, I'm in Denver and I have a new vice president of sales that I'm now reporting to. And I remember he walked into the office in Denver, and he'd be another mentor in my life too. I got great stories about him, but he handed me a little paperback book and it said, "A leader is a servant." And I already had that philosophy that was in my DNA because of my father. And I read that book. And I'm a true believer that, you know what, leaders, you lead by example and you roll your sleeves up and you get in the trenches with your team. That's the one thing I loved about my father was we lived 45 minutes away from that plant that he was running. And his goal was to be in that office in the facility because the first shift started at 6 a.m. And he wanted to be in the building. He wanted to be one of the first people in there. He didn't need to be. He probably could have showed up at 8 o'clock if he wanted to. But he used to drag me, and I used to complain. Here's a high school kid, and we're getting up at 4:30 in the morning and going to work every day in the summer. I'm home for summer break during college. But boy, he that I saw what he did. I watched it with my own two eyes, and his people really respected him. And because he led by example, I think that's how I lead my life. You know, it's not beneath me if we have a big kitting job going on right now out in our warehouse here, 100 feet away from me. I'll go right out there and help them kit. A team gets the job done, and it doesn't matter what your title is. You do what you need to do to get the job done. And ultimately, we all at GBS here, my philosophy is we work for our customers. That's who my boss is. My boss is all those customers that we service and have relationships with. So I think that's the difference.
Absolutely. And really, the key to now, I'm going to combine networking with
Mhm.
leadership. So, the key to networking, there's a mantra: know you, like you, trust you, they'll do business with you. Everybody knows the mantra. But when you go to a networking event, you go with a servant's heart. You go for the act of giving, not receiving. So everybody thinks that you go to one of these networking events that you're going to sell. That's the absolute wrong idea. When you get to having a relationship with somebody, you say, you know something, I like you. I like how you do business. How can
Mhm.
I make you more successful? How can I be a good referral source for you? That usually blows them away. I don't even know what you do yet. And you're saying, how can I be more successful? But that's what you do. So that's the mindset that you get in. So when you said having a servant's heart, it's all over as long
Yep.
as you are authentic when you say it. And I
It-
want to tell you that there's an old book by Ken Blanchard called The
okay.
Raving Fan. The
I've
Raving.
I've read other books by him, but not that one. But okay. Yep.
It's a small book.
Right.
I used to give it out to realtors when I was in the mortgage industry. It's a quick read, 45-minute read, whatever, but it's all about customer service. So that's what I
Well,
used to.
I'd like to make another comment about attending networking events because I go to quite a bit of them throughout the year. And you're right. I think when you first approach someone or you meet someone, yeah, the thought process has to be this relationship has to be mutually beneficial. I'm not here just to sell you and sell you GBS products and services. It's got to be mutually beneficial. And that's about, and now what are you doing? You're building relationship, you're building rapport with somebody and so forth. And that's 100% how I go into those events. And we've had a lot of success here at GBS doing it that way.
And but most people don't have that thinking, don't have that way of thinking, and it throws everything off. If you go in with that in thought in your mind, then you'll be much more successful,
Yeah.
much more.
I love it.
Well,
That's always been my philosophy. As you could tell earlier in this conversation, I mentioned about all the different places I've lived. I've traveled all over the country for work. And again, I think it's in my DNA that I like meeting people. I like when I go out to dinner and if I'm alone, I don't sit at a table by myself with my computer. I go sit at the bar. I sit at the bar and I talk to people. And it's mutually beneficial. It's not about me necessarily trying to sell you something. And here's what I do. So,
you always have the other person talk about themselves. I
correct.
use something called FORM. It's
Okay.
family, occupation, recreation, and a message. So you
Oh, I
can
like
take
that.
any,
Mhm.
yep, you can use it.
Okay.
When you speak to somebody, you have that in mind.
Right.
Husband, wife, sister, brother, daughter, son, whatever. You can have them talk about themselves because people love to talk about themselves. The more that they talk, the that barrier that they usually have between people that starts to come down, and that trust factor, which is so crucial, that goes up. So you're automatically more trusted
Yep.
as a networking person, and that's before they even know what you do.
Exactly. I have another quick little funny story. So my first day, actually, I have to say this past Wednesday was June 11th. And I started my career I graduated college in 1990. I started my career on June 11th, 1990. So I just had my 35th anniversary this past Wednesday of being in my career, which I thought was cool. But I remember that first day, I walk into the office at 8 a.m. in the morning, and it's a sales job. And I go into my director of sales' office, and we sit down, and he starts onboarding me, and we're doing the paperwork and all that good stuff. Then he goes, "Come here." And he takes me into the conference room. And then we sit down. And then he looks at me and he goes, "Tell me something about myself." And I'm like looking at him like, "What are you talking about? You're my manager. You hired me from Cal State Chico." He goes, "No, tell me something about myself." And I'm like, "Dave, I don't know what you mean." He goes, "Go back into my office and sit in there for 5 minutes and then come back." And I went back in his office and I started looking around the office. I came back and I said, "Okay, now I'm going to tell you something about yourself based on what I saw in your office." And he was a big auto racing guy, big Indianapolis 5. He had pictures of the Indy 500. He had pictures of his family and his daughter on his desk. And that's how you start to build rapport with people. You're going to walk into a potential customer's office, talk about them. And because like you said, Michael, people like to talk about themselves. So I do that little trick with any new person I hire. I bring them into this office, we chat for a little while, and then we leave and I say, "Tell me something." And if you looked around my office, you'd see a lot of Chicago Cubs stuff over there because I grew up in Chicago. I'm a big golf fan. I've been to the Masters and the Atlanta Athletic Club and the PGA Championship back in 2011. That's over there. Yeah, you could see things about Jeff Grippando, and now you're starting to break ice and build rapport with somebody. Yep.
Absolutely,
Yep.
absolutely. And
Yeah.
here's a little trick you can
Yep.
give to your people, whatever.
Yep.
When you walk into somebody's office and you're thinking form, okay, that's
Right.
what you're thinking. Look on the
Mm-hmm.
walls, any pictures, any ideas, anything else. But the pictures that he has on his desk,
Right.
okay, if the pictures are facing him, that's his family, and he likes to keep them close. If the
Yeah.
pictures are facing out towards you, that is an invitation for you to ask questions about his family.
Good
So
tip. I've never heard that before. Yeah, that's
yeah,
that. Okay. Yeah.
it's very big, very big. And that's just
Right.
something with the networking that you do. Instead of networking events, when you're going and having a meeting with somebody, you have about 30 seconds to check out the walls. Is there
Mm-hmm.
major leagues? Is there a youth sports, a grandson or something? Something that will tell you a musical note on the wall. He's into music.
Right.
Something, and you can talk about that.
And
Anyway,
that's the beautiful thing. Obviously, in 1990, cell phones weren't around quite yet, where everyone had one. There was no such thing, obviously, as LinkedIn. So that's another like tidbit. I do this myself because even as president of this operation, I still prospect. Again, a leader leads by example. Yeah, I utilize LinkedIn all the time. Look at people's past and backgrounds and find some common ground there, and it really opens up that whole process of networking and so forth. Yeah.
that's true. One day you should look at my LinkedIn profile. It's about this big, okay, because it's got everything listed inside of it. Okay, so you've mentioned others.
Yep.
You've probably been mentored, which you have said before. What makes a mentorship relationship truly powerful?
I think when that relationship maybe goes a little bit beyond business, it becomes a little more personal, maybe. That's, I think, when it becomes powerful. I'm mentoring a couple of young sales reps right now on my team. And to be able to, you know, almost be a part of their family. It's interesting. I get asked questions, and because these folks are in their 20s and I'm in my mid to late 50s, and the questions they're asking me, I've lived those. I've lived there. I remember I have one young man who just had a baby, and I remember when we had our first baby, and I know what you're going through, and I know you're struggling with getting your work done because you're tired. And actually, I was with him yesterday, and we just had a whole conversation of some tips that I gave him on how to get through that and so forth, because he knows it's starting to affect his job a little bit. And so to me, that's when mentoring typically in the beginning seems to be all about training. I'm going to teach you something. I'm going to show you how to get something done. But when it becomes that next level of communication, like I just mentioned, the relationship is growing into areas outside of just the day-to-day business. I think that is when it becomes powerful.
Absolutely. And you have to find that fine line between business and personal, but a true mentor, you know everything about the person who you're mentoring and the trials and tribulations that he's going through. So if you can give him advice in that respect, you become all knowing. You become bigger and better than he even thought. And that will help him in business even further. Okay, so some people only network when they need something.
Hmm.
What's your take on networking as a long term leadership practice?
I think my take is it's one of those things you got to be disciplined to the activity, right? And it needs to be interwoven inside your goals and objectives in your business plan. So that whiteboard back there, there's definitely networking objectives that you'll see up on that board, but have fun with it. See, I like it. I think some people look at it as a chore. I actually enjoy it. And because I have fun with it. I want to get out there and I want to walk into a networking event and I got my GBS Brand Connect shirt on and I want people to see that. I want people to ask me, who's GBS? What do you all do? And type of thing and so forth. So I think it just needs to be a part of any other golden objective. It's just as important as us hitting our revenue and gross profit goals. That networking, it's just as important. And then set goals for yourself. Yeah, I went to a networking event in Chicago a couple weeks ago, and my goal was to leave that event with 10 new contacts, and I accomplished that. It started off a little slow. I'll be honest with you. I was a little worried that I wasn't going to get 10 contacts, but I stuck it out, and it turned out great.
I used to go to networking when I was in a mortgage company. I used to go to networking events and come home with a shoebox filled with business cards and say, "Look how good I did," when I didn't do good at all. Now, with
Right.
a three or 4 hour event, I say come back with 15, 20 business cards
Yeah.
and do your follow. I have a whole secret sauce for follow up
Okay.
that really you'll know right away whether or not they are truly interested, just a little bit interested, or not. With everything that I have, it really introduces various ways where you will know yourself. So
Correct.
I know
Hmm.
exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, it's about
Um,
quality, not quantity when you go to these
absolutely.
events, right? Yes. Yep.
Absolutely. And you have to have fun. If you're not enjoying yourself, that comes out. You know,
100%.
you see, yeah, this
Yeah.
is,
Right.
yes, well, I'm having a very good time. And to be yourself, crack a joke, providing that you're a funny person. You have to
Right.
crack a joke because nothing's worse than somebody
Mhm.
cracking a joke who isn't funny. Okay.
You're right.
So
That
that's a whole
takes the
different
air
thing.
out of the conversation or the room
It
real fast. Yes. Yeah.
really
Right.
fast. It really fast. Okay, so for leaders facing tough times, what role does network play in how they respond, adapt, and grow through it?
I think having a solid network or even your mentors and so forth, being able to lean on other people and past experiences and being able to pick the phone up or send an email, send a text to someone, hey, I'm struggling with this right now. I'm sure you or in your organization are feeling the same pains. I'll bring up tariffs. It's been a wild ride. I think since the start of the year and so forth. And especially when your business is so tied into products and services that are coming from outside of the country, that's been a big challenge. And I will admit, I have talked a lot to my network and contacts about how they're dealing with it, what they're learning, how they're educating their customers, how they're trying to stay in front of it. That's probably the best thing I can say about that, because that has become a huge topic of conversation at a lot of events that I attend in the spaces and areas that I run in now and so forth. Yeah, I think to answer your question, having a broad network, a very diversified network, only can help you. Just be open to the fact to reach out and ask for help, ask questions if need be.
Yeah, I have a great many connections on LinkedIn, but I have a certain few that ask me the questions through LinkedIn or email because they're going through a problem, usually a networking or communication problem, and they want to know, is this the right way or is there a better way to handle it? And I answered a little bit, and they always are appreciative. But A, I was asked, so it made me feel good. My answer made them feel good. It was always that type of a feeling, and they would respect that and
Right.
make my network grow. And that's really what I'm after. Okay, so here we go. How do you spot real connections versus surface level networking, especially when your time and energy are limited?
Oh, that's a good question. Now, I
Yeah,
will. Yeah, we talked a lot about when you go to a networking event and it has to be a mutually beneficial relationship. We did this at GBS probably about the time I started here. One of the first things that we had to identify was, what is our sweet spot? What are the vertical markets that we want to play in? What are the products and services we want to sell in those vertical markets? And what do we need to be smart about? We're going to walk away or not focus on, I would say, in our prospecting efforts. So we built what we call a sweet spot. So when I go to these events, especially like a chamber event, I go to the Akron Chamber of Commerce, I go to the Canton Chamber of Commerce here. I've been to Youngstown as well, and so forth. And there's all walks of life there, all different kinds of businesses and so forth. I have an idea of where I want to focus my time and so forth. And I know there's other people there that want to capture my attention, my time, if they're selling something to me on a personal level, because you get a lot of that, obviously. There's insurance people there, the folks that want to put the rain guard over your gutters, they're all there and so forth. So I think you just got to understand where you want to spend your time at and in that 2 hour session or 3 hours or whatever it is. But always be nice, always be cordial, speak to everybody, and but then quickly pivot to where you need to be and who you need to be speaking to, I guess is the best way I would say that.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm laughing while you're
Yep.
talking because I'm agreeing with everything that
Right.
you're saying. And, whether I do a local chamber of commerce, also part of that. It's like when I get up in front of them and I say you're at a networking table, you don't talk immediately. You don't say
Right.
anything.
Right.
Wait for the conversation. Is this a
Correct.
conversation that I want to become involved with? If it's not, you politely bow out and go to the next table.
That's
You're
right.
not embarrassed.
Yep.
And if it is, of course, then you stay and talk and everything else. But
Right.
but you have to, it's called active listening. You have to
Right.
listen for what's going on. Is this conversation? It's not, I'll see you later. I'm going to the next table. You
Yep.
don't say that, of course. You politely bow out and you go to the next
Yeah.
table. But
But it could
it,
be there could I had a situation a year ago where I met some folks and I didn't quite know. I just walked up to the table and I started talking to them. They represented the Akron Canton Food Bank. And now that would not fit a sweet spot of GBS Brand Connect and so forth. But I started talking to them, and it actually was mutually beneficial because now my wife and I volunteer and time and donations and what have you because of that conversation.
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
not selling to them. We will never sell to them and so forth. But you're right. You got to walk into every conversation politely. Everybody wants to talk about what they do because it's important to them. And what they're doing is a wonderful mission. And that was interesting, but it had nothing to do with me selling to them.
absolutely. The best way to go out and to network, if you volunteer,
Mhm.
volunteer for something
Volunteer.
and you
Yes.
go in because eventually it'll come around. What do you do for a living? Right?
Correct.
You don't
Mhm.
come out and say it, but something will happen and say, what do you do? And then you go and start talking about it, but you're never pushing it. You're trusted almost immediately when that happens because you haven't pushed it. Yeah.
I do like those events too when you go and especially the breakfast ones. So everyone is sitting down having breakfast around a table and you don't know who you're necessarily sitting with. But there's questions on the table and the table everyone has to answer the question. So it just gets the conversation going and moving. And then usually there's a guest presenter, but then there's like networking afterwards, right? So you know right away, okay, here's a table of 10 people. Based on those questions that we asked and we all talked, there's maybe two or three there. But then when you get up and start mingling, those are the ones that you're going to talk to, and everyone goes off into their proper areas, I would say. So, yep.
Absolutely. And I like those also, by the way,
Yeah.
the breakfast, because
Good icebreakers. Yeah.
it's a very good icebreaker.
Hmm.
Sometimes you need that when you walk into an event or something. My usually go-to sentence is, wow, that's a nice blazer, or that's a
Right.
nice pair of shoes, or
Right.
something to break up the conversation
Correct.
without saying, hey, what do you do? Or usually when
What do you
somebody
do? Why
says,
are you here? And what do you want to sell me? Yeah.
right, usually they say, hey, what brought you here today? I
Right.
said, my 2017 Dodge Ram.
Right. Yeah.
And they're like,
See?
what? Yeah,
Yeah.
and it throws them completely off. Um, okay, so as a mentor, how do you help others build confidence in reaching out and connecting with people who seem out of their league?
Oh, that's a great question. And the best thing that I can say that I do, number one, I like to role play a little bit first because
Okay.
I have a couple young salespeople that they're it's interesting. You're in sales, but you're uncomfortable in this environment, right? So I like to role play it first. Let's just role play. Pretend I'm the CEO of XYZ company and you just came up to me at this event. So let's role play that. Then when we go to the event together, I'll have them tag along with me in the beginning. They listen to me and see what I'm doing and how I'm speaking, and then I'll send them on their own. And I say, okay, now you got to go over there, go to that table way over there, and so forth. So it is a definite process. It's a definite process in getting people out of their shells. There's one event that I love, and I'm going to take a couple of my young reps to this one coming up here next month. Akron has the Cleveland Guardians double A baseball team. It's called the Akron Rubber Ducks. And they play their stadiums right in downtown Akron. And the Chamber of Commerce does business at the ballpark night. And it's the best networking event they do. They open up out in right field. There's like a big party patio out there. There's like a tiki bar. And they open that all up to the chamber members, and batting practice is going on behind you. The stadium's not, people aren't coming in yet to the stadium because the game's probably not starting for another 2 hours. But everyone is out there on a nice late afternoon weeknight and having a beer and talking. And everybody's we've gotten so much business just by attending that one event because the atmosphere, it's because of the environment. And I'm going to take my two young reps to that here in a couple weeks in July and just wear shorts, wear a t-shirt, and put your GBS ball cap on, and we're gonna go. And you're gonna go, and you're not gonna hang with me. I'm gonna go over there. You're gonna go over there. The other guy's gonna go over here, and yeah, and we're gonna have fun. And yeah, they got to get out of the shell. You just got to keep forcing them to get out of their shell. Yeah.
And eventually they're going to eke out themselves. But that's a great, down here, a lot of the groups go to the Stripers,
Yes,
the
that's right.
trip.
In Gwinnett County. Yeah. Yeah.
It's the same thing. And I used to, when I lived in New York, we had
Mhm.
another minor league ballpark and we had the same events there. I had the best time networking with everybody, but having such a good time that, we're talking. And all I did was make arrangements for meetings another time. And
Yep.
that was it.
Well, I told my young reps, I go, isn't it easier? And if you say no, then I'm going to be perplexed. But isn't it easier going to a networking event and talking to someone face to face than picking up a phone cold and trying to call somebody? Don't you find that, to me, anything done face to face is 1,000 times easier than me picking up a phone and calling someone cold?
Absolutely. You're preaching to the choir, Jeff. You're preaching to the choir because that's exactly what, look, Zoom is great. Your
Yep.
cell phone is great.
Right.
They all have but nothing is the same as when you meet somebody, you feel the vibe of the person, you
Yep.
feel the vibe of the room, and
Right.
it gets you juiced. You're with all
Yes.
these people. There's just something about it that you can't get through Zoom.
That's right.
Just
100%.
can't.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. What's one leadership trait that makes someone magnetic in their network? What someone others want to follow or collaborate with? What what's
I
one leadership trait that magnetic person has that others want to follow or collaborate with?
well, I think number one, having an outgoing personality, having the trait of, like you said, that I being a leader, you have to make hard decisions at times. You have to make tough decisions at times. Always be firm, be frank, be friendly. Those are like some of the key F words that firm, frank, friendly. If that's those are good leadership traits, I think. And that makes people gravitate to leaders and so forth. It's that's there it was the four F's, and I can't remember the fourth one. It was firm, frank, friendly, fair. That those are the four F's. Yeah, but so remember that mentor I mentioned to you way back when early in my career. I remember him telling me that. But those are the four F words, and if you live your management career, your leadership career by those four things, you'll be successful. I totally remember that. Yep.
I agree with that 100%.
Yep.
100%. Before I ask you this, the last question,
Okay.
you're successful. You have achieved a presidential status and you're mentoring, and I believe you're doing it the right way just by listening to the way you're doing it. But you had to have made mistakes.
Oh yeah.
What is one of your biggest mistakes that you made, and how did you overcome it?
Oh boy, that's a great
Yeah,
question.
I get everybody with this question.
That is, yeah. I'm trying to think of a specific example. Yeah, here's some mistakes that I made, and this one happened not too long ago. As a leader, you want to rely on the opinions of your team, right? And we were interviewing a gentleman that I had met previously at a lunch and had talked to via a Teams call as well. We're hiring for a sales position. And this is my father passed away at this time, so I had to get down to Greensboro, Georgia. And I missed the day that all these candidates were brought into corporate here and they had to go through a series of interviews. So they were interviewing with HR, with my director of sales, with other various leaders in the organization. So I get back from my dad's funeral and what have you, and it was a Friday afternoon, and right here I'm sitting at my desk, and these three folks that interviewed our candidates are sitting there, and they're giving me their updates with their feelings and opinions about the candidates. And one of the guy that I had lunch with and the guy that I had been talking to and I was very strong on, supposedly he did very poorly that day in the interview process. So all three of my people that said to me, "Don't make him an offer. We think you ought to make this gentleman an offer." So I listened to them. And sure enough, we made an offer to this other gentleman, and that guy only lasted about 6 months, decided that he hated this job and went elsewhere. And then the gentleman that we didn't make an offer to went elsewhere and is being very successful where he's at. So I think the mistake that I made was I didn't trust my gut. And that's probably if I sat here long enough and thought about other mistakes, it's because I didn't trust my gut at that moment. And that's what caused maybe the mistake and so forth. But that one was more of a recent one. That one happened about 2 years ago and so forth. So trust your instincts, trust your gut. But a good leader does rely on their people and the advice of their people. You have to allow them to have that opportunity to share their feelings and their thoughts. And like I said, we build our business plan as a team, but sometimes you, as the leader, you got to trust your gut. And I missed on that one. I swung and missed that one. Yep.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You take what everybody's telling you of your
Mhm.
team and you have to digest it and think about it, but you put it up against your gut, what you truly believe in. And
Yep.
sometimes it may go their way, sometimes it may not. You, as a leader, have to make that decision.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a
Okay.
good
So,
question. That's a hard one.
so yeah, of course it's a hard one.
Yeah.
That's why I asked
Yeah.
you. Okay. So bringing this podcast full circle,
Okay.
if you could challenge every listener to take one bold networking step this week, what would it be?
I think the bold step I would say in a networking is look for a networking opportunity that's not traditional. Maybe do something that, and this is a bold step for me too, do something outside of the norm. Like we all it's easy to go to chamber events or other networking events and so forth. But maybe the bold step is network network in a new place. Maybe it's church. Maybe I try something new and I'll challenge myself to do the same thing. Typically, when I go to church and I leave church, you're talking to people more at on a personal level, family, friends kind of level. Maybe turn that more into a networking opportunity, something a little bit different. I don't know.
without
I'm
being
just
too
kind of throwing that out.
salesy.
I don't know if that's the right place, but yeah,
Without being salesy.
without being salesy. Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Uh,
Maybe
uh,
just do something that you never have done before that's considered networking and putting yourself out there. So,
That's great. That's great.
yep.
Jeff, I got to tell you, I can probably talk to you for another 2 hours
Oh, this is
on
fun.
every, right? So this was great. This was great.
Yep.
But if somebody wanted to get hold of you, get
Sure.
hold of GBS or something that you have to offer them, what's the best way for them to get hold of you?
Well, I like people. Number one is I like getting emails, and I don't mind giving my cell phone number out. That's probably you want the best way to get a hold of me is my cell phone, and I respond to everybody. I have this little weird knack of I don't go to bed at night until I clean my entire email inbox out. I don't leave stuff in there. That's after dinner, I'm just cleaning up the day. I will respond to you. So my email is a great place, and then even my cell phone number is a great place to get a hold of me.
I'll put
So
that into the show notes
okay,
so
okay,
people will have it.
okay,
But
great.
Jeff, I'm telling you again, this was you're a great guest, and I look forward to talking to you soon.
Yeah, I like talking about work all the time. You could call me out. I'm a big green egg guy. Like this weekend, I know it's Father's Day, but my kids don't live in Ohio, so I won't see them. But I'll be outside on my green egg, smoking something and talking to someone. I'm sure about whatever. Yeah, that's
I'm
what happens on
sure.
weekends for
I,
me. Yep. So
I'm sure.
all
All
good.
right.
Yep.
Okay,
Well,
Jeff. I'll talk soon.
I'd like to. Yeah. Happy Father's Day to your audience, and Michael, this was wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, hold on, folks. Don't go anywhere. Let's hear from our sponsors. David Neal, co-founder, Revved Up Kids. Revved Up Kids is on a mission to protect children and teens from sexual abuse, exploitation, and trafficking. They provide prevention training programs for children, teens, and adults. To learn more, go to revvedupkids.org. Henry Kaplan, Century 21. When it comes to making the biggest financial decision of your life, leave it in the hands of a proven professional, Henry Kaplan. Henry is a global real estate agent with Century 21, celebrating his 41st year in business. No matter where you're moving, Henry has the right connections for you. You can contact Henry at 561 427 4888. A huge thank you to our guest for sharing such incredible insights today. And of course, a big shout out to you, our amazing listeners, for tuning in and spending your time with us. If you're interested in my digital courses, being coached, or having me come and talk to your company, just go to Michael and fill out the request form. Remember, networking isn't about being perfect, it's about being present. So take what you've learned today, get out there, and make some meaningful connections. If you've enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with someone who could use a little networking inspiration. Let's keep the conversation going. You can find me on Apple, Spotify, Pandora, YouTube, or my website, forman.com/podcasts.